Have you ever heard of the African Hebrew Israelites? Well, they are a sect of Black Americans who began moving to Israel in the late 1960s, claiming to be descendants of the ancient Israelites. They're known for religious practices that include veganism and polygamy, and number about 3,000 people here in Israel, most of whom live in the southern desert town of Dimona. Now, most have received permanent residency under arrangements with the Israeli government, but now at least 46 families have just received deportation orders from the Interior Ministry saying that they have to leave the country within just 60 days. Well, we have Prince Emmanuel Ben Yehuda joining us from Dimona itself. He's the national spokesman for the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem. So first of all, tell us more about your community and when this movement to Israel began.
Well, thank you very much, Natasha, for having us on this evening. Well, there's a very rich history of tribes across Africa tracing their descendants to the land of Israel. And that also extends into the Americas, where many of the tribes were taken during the slave trade. In fact, there's a book by Professor James Landing out of the University of Chicago called Black Judaism, The History of an American Movement, which traces the presence of African Americans who trace their descendants to Israel back to the 1500s. So it's quite a very rich history that then in 1966, at a Beta Hebrew Cultural Center in Chicago, which was home of one of the many Israelite communities in the Americas, Ben-Ami, the spiritual leader of our community and the founder of our community, had a vision that it was time for descendants of the Israelites among African Americans to return to the Holy Land. And a year later, in 1967, he led 350 members of the community back into Liberia for 2.5 years. And then in 1969, the first members of the community began to come back into Israel.
Right.
And that was our beginning back home.
So this is a community that now plays a significant role in Israel. Can you tell us about what kind of role the African Hebrew Israelites play here in Israeli society? Do members of your community go to the army? Do they feel Israeli?
This is our home. We're thoroughly involved. I mean, after a rocky start those first couple of years, we've become very much a part of the fabric of Israeli society. You see us everywhere you go. We've worked with the foreign ministry in the areas of Haspara. We have sent young people to Eurovision. Our children, as you said, serve in the army. We've represented Israel in academic and cultural and sports events around the world. When you turn on the television, you see our young people in Merutz HaMillion and Israeli Ninja. So we're very much a part of every element of society as you look across the country, employed in various areas. This is our home, and we've grown up together.
So why are we seeing the Israeli government now issuing deportation orders to families?
That's a good question, especially after the fact that for the last almost 10 years, we've been reaching out to government offices, especially the Ministry of Interior, hoping to resolve problem cases that have surfaced. And so it hasn't been on an effort, for lack of effort on our part in terms of looking to solve problems. But after not getting an answer for years and years and years to be responded to with deportation orders, the question becomes why? You know, we're not strangers. Obviously, we weren't hiding. We were trying to find a solution to these situations where people have been here for decades. Young people have born here, grown up here, married here, and having no status. And that's not a conscionable situation to take at this time in the 21st century.
How has the Hebrew Israelite community responded to this order for deportation? What has the reaction been among community members?
Well, first of all, there's been shock, there's been anger, there's been a full range of emotions in terms of what the feelings are. But what's been most gratifying is that as we've reached out in terms of reaching out to inform the public of what has taken place, the overwhelming show of support, and I want to thank the Israeli public as a whole for reaching out and providing some level of comfort and support for members of our community during something of a traumatic time. At the same time, we've also been reaching out to various legal advisors to help us put together an intelligence strategy to respond effectively to the Ministry of Interior's plan. Likewise, we're reaching out to politicians at a difficult time since there's no government. We're trying to find someone who will listen and take some proactive position seeking to cancel this order. There's not many offices that you can go to affect that kind of change. But historically, we've been able to work with a various number of personalities which have come to our aid and work with us to help advance, not just for us, but for all of Israeli society. We feel like we're a very unique community and have brought a lot to this to the country, both nationally and internationally. And we feel like it's an advantage to all of us to work together and continue in that pattern.
So, if there was any message that you could send to the Israeli government and to people who are watching this and want to learn more about your community and understand its role here in Israel, what would that be?
I would say to the government, reflect the character of your people. The people of Israel have embraced us and we have embraced each other. And if the government would likewise do the same, we would be able to continue to work together and show forth a great deal of light to the rest of the world, which is being torn apart by racial hatred, religious hatred, and all kinds of divisions being played out on our screens every day and on the news programs. So I would say, reflect the character of your people, reach out and embrace us, work together with us and solve problems, and let's show the world the character of Israel.
All right. Well, I would like to thank you for joining us and kind of giving us some background about your community. I also want to just quickly ask, are we seeing a movement of Hebrew Israelites, Black Israelites outside of the country who are interested in coming to Israel still?
I think every Israelite around the world, not just Black ones, but white ones, are interested in coming to Israel. The world is in such turmoil, I think it also turns people's eyes towards Israel much more readily. And I think it's a great opportunity, more so than anything else for us, to show the character of this country and the character of its people. I mean, Israel is much more than a discussion about intifada or occupation or conflict. There's rich history, there's rich life, and there are things worth living and worth sharing here. Our community in Dimona has sought to be a microcosm of that. We try to create what we would call the sane society, where every institution in our community reflects an ability to contribute to the improvement of someone's health. From organic agriculture to veganism to positive music to only natural clothes. So we say, let's be that difference maker in the world.